So now let's get to meet my guest for this morning. And we have Professor Akosua Adomah-Ampofo. He's Professor of African Studies and Acting Dean of International Programs, University of Ghana, Legon. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Right. Also here in the studio is Professor Pt.A, Associate Professor of Law, University of Ghana, Legon. Thank you for making time to join us, sir.
Thank you for having me.
On Zoom, we have Professor George K.T. Odro, former Pro Vice Chancellor and current Dean, School of Educational Development and Outreach, University of Cape Coast. Thank you very much, Prof, for joining us. Great, good to have you. Also, Professor Charles Mafo, UTAG National President. Do we have Professor Mafo on the screen yet? We also have Samuel Sego of the GRASAC. He's a national president. Larry K. Aguado is the editor, Colleges of Education Weekly Journal. So it's a packed, thank you very much for joining us. It's a packed morning of the people who know and who are affected directly by the new bill, University Bill 2020, that the government is seeking to pass. And a lot of questions have been raised about it. Among the criticisms that they have raised is that it lacks, does not appreciate what is known as differentiation, diversification. It impedes that. It's retrogressive. In fact, it sins against the independent governance structures of a university. Also, the autonomy that the university ought to have is going to be lost. A very important thing in the university is academic freedom. They say that will be completely wiped away and reduce the teachers and lecturers in the universities to cowards who cannot do research without prior approval and who cannot speak their mind, and to teach the next generation that one ought to be bold to speak their mind about any subject. Among the criticism is that it is unconstitutional, and they will refer to various portions of the Constitution to show you why they say so. And that government is suddenly packing the University Council with its people, overwhelming majority, to, as it were, dictate what must happen. There are some who argue, he who pays, calls the tune, is it? Okay, so somebody is responsible for them, and that individual or institution must have a say. Must it be a direct executive control or accountability, which must happen as happens everywhere else? So these are the issues that we'll be canvassing for you on the show this morning. We will also be joined by Samuel Obing, who is Executive Director of Parliamentary Network Africa, to give us a brief as to where the bill is now in Parliament. So everybody, welcome.
Thank you.
And let's have your views also coming even ahead of time so we can ask them. And I must announce that before my producers tell me that they have tried all week to have government direct participation, but they have been unresponsive. So we'll proceed with or without them. Okay. I will first like us to get a bit of a view of how you guys are managing in the universities in these COVID times. So just, I mean, very briefly, a comment or in a minute or two, tell us about how life is like on the university campus, practically. How is education going on and moving forward?
Well, definitely things have changed. When finally, initially the university decided that it would close down, suspend lectures. But later on, the government came back and said that the university should be closed down. And after that, the students stayed for a while to be make sure that they are not carrying any virus home and so on. After that, they went home, and the new way of doing things is to go online and conduct teaching. And so that is what we have been doing now. In a lot of ways, it's going well, but the students also have some concerns about the online teaching. But we have developed a schedule, and we have developed most of conducting the lectures and also conducting assessments and so on.
All right.
So that is the new way of doing things on the campuses now.
Okay. Do you have ideas as to how long it's going to take to have physical, face-to-face interaction with students?
We can't put a date on it. In fact, university management at the University of Ghana is in discussion about this. So you're asking how we are managing. One of the other things, in addition to online teaching, is scores of online meetings.
Okay.
And so we are always in one meeting or the other trying to address current problems and to foresee problems that may come up, because we're also looking at universities on the continent who are similar to us and looking at universities globally to, you know, have our fingers on the pulse on what's going on. Students, where I sit in the international programs office, mostly international students are coming to us with their issues. Most of them have left, but a number of them, a few of them are still on campus, and obviously they also have some challenges. And you know, we need students to communicate with us more often when they have these challenges. But my concluding comment on how the way forward is that we are constantly in discussion and in meetings to see how we can deal with having classes live once again. Right.
How badly is the calendar affected, academic calendar affected?
For now, we cannot say how badly it's affected. Obviously, we have to also be constantly in touch with what the president is saying, and what the nation is saying.
Right.
We can only move in step with what the nation says we must do and what we must do, where we must not do. So we take guidance from that. But we hope that the next academic year can start. In what shape it will start is really what the question is.
Okay. But definitely from where you sit, Professor Odro, you would think that we are going to have to run lectures and assessments, examinations virtually for a very long time to come, not so?
Surely. If things don't change, then strategically, we need to find ways of coping with the new challenges, and those things could be possible. Yeah.
But effectiveness, is it the same doing things virtually and also, you know, as it were, direct interaction with students in a lecture hall?
Well, we cannot replace virtual interaction with direct contacts, particularly when we place it in a cultural context. As Africans and as Ghanaians, we believe in face-to-face. And so machines can replace human contact. So the quality, obviously, wouldn't be as it should be. But if we find ourselves in a situation where virtual intervention will be the only best thing to do, then we only have to cope with it and find means of enhancing quality. Yeah.
Is Professor Mafu on the line?
Yeah, I'm here.
Right. Professor Mafu, thank you very much for joining us. You must be in Kumasi now, right?
Right.
Great. Okay, so UTAG, are there any, you know, special brainstorming sessions that you are having as to look at what can be done to give the same quality or even better to students in this time?
Yes, Samson, thank you. Good morning to your listeners. Yes, we have been brainstorming as to how we could have a better, study sessions with our students. And it has not been easy. I mean, you know that over the years, as Dr. Do rightly put it, culturally, we have engaged our students with physical, interaction, face-to-face. And so even where we have used the online system, at some point we have brought them to school to have that physical interaction with them. And so to go back with online studies with them became problematic. First, in the sense that this is new to us, and in fact, most of our members are not very much into this technological stuff of teaching students online. And then also the fact that over the years, universities have not really prioritized online teaching to the extent that we have not invested so much into a robust system where, if I take KNUST, for example, 64,000 students could be engaged online. I mean, the system I don't think we could contain them. Recently, KNUST, for example, a lot of, interventions have been made with regards to the system. But even that, students also complain. I mean, imagine students that come to campus and when they are home, they are far away places where even having internet connectivity is a problem.
That's right.
So all these has fed into our discussions, and we believe that if this is going to be, as people call it, new normal, then of course serious interventions should be made. Government should come in, much investment should be made to such an extent that we could do that, and also train us, the lecturers, train us to be used to these things. Right, and most of the students also to be helped acquire these gadgets they could also use to get in touch with us. Right. So something has not been easy at all.
Right. Okay. So the very final question, which is to you and also to the GRASAC president, will be: imagine that the president spoke to us tomorrow, and he's billed to speak to us sometime in the course of this week, if it's not tomorrow. And most definitely will begin a process of easing the restrictions. I doubt that there may be an ease in the restrictions in a manner that opens up, schools for people to return to the classroom. But imagine that happened. Are you ready to get back to the classroom, practicing the various, protocols, preventive measures?
Yes, yes, we need to. I mean, as I always tell people, the world is not waiting for us. Every jurisdiction is trying to take steps towards, getting to the so-called new normal. And so I believe that we have to put things in place. I know if the government mentions it or says that we should go back to classroom, they might have prepared or put in a lot of protocols as to how we could, go back to school. So for me, I think when they do that, we will just have to get along with it. And as I've put it, the protocol that will come along with it has to be practiced. At the end of the day, we just have to move on.
Okay. Mr. Sego, do you think that this is possible in the immediate time to get back to the classroom? Hello, Samuel.
Getting back to the classroom at this moment should be done in a gradualist manner. Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Getting back to the classroom in this time should be done in a gradualist manner. We believe that we should come back to school in a gradual form. There should be a system where we will allow a certain group of students to come back to school. Then other batch will come another time. We can't all come to school at the same time. We are talking about 3 million Ghanaian students across board going back to school. There will be a lot of movement across the country, and we are going to increase the risk of spread of the virus. So what the student leadership across the country is saying is that government should put steps to ensure that only final years come back to school. And even with that, it should be done in such a way that we will be able to observe critical social distancing protocol. Until then, we should not reopen school. And we are proposing that schools should reopen in August. For the universities, we are already writing examinations. So there is no need to rush to open the universities at the moment. We are doing the online examination, doing assignments and all that, and that is fine. But for the BEC and the SSE students, if in any case they have to go to school, then we should be looking at somewhere August, and it shouldn't be immediately the government lifts the ban on the restriction. And that is very important for all of us to ensure safety of every student and the teachers in the school.
Interesting views there. So now let's get settled to begin to look at the University Bill 2020 and the questions that have come up about it. Let's start with the students also who are affected by it. The students held a press conference that was, is it yesterday or 2 days ago?
2 days ago.
Yes, 2 days ago, and they expressed views about the bill. They don't seem to be entirely against the bill, but they want some of the sections amended. Let's listen to Isaac Hyde, the NUC's president, on the public university bill.
We only felt that there are aspects of the bill which needs to be corrected, or if possible needs amendment. Then again, there has been some calls within the structures where the arm of government, in terms of government's role or involvement with the operations of the institutions, will be a bit problematic, looking at the way and manner some appointments will be made. For instance, you have the Vice Chancellor, you have the Chancellor, and of course the Chairman of Council, all inadvertently being appointed by government, directly or indirectly. We feel that when you allow some of these things, it subverts independence, it subverts the ability of the institutions to take decisions or initiatives without government interference. Therefore, for this matter that we are calling for government to make some amends and also withdraw if seen. For instance, there's an aspect who support government. Quite remember, you know of the Africa Integras case with the University of Ghana. You also know about the University of Ghana Medical Facility, an instance where there was a tussle between the university and government. Then again, within that same space, you also have situations where the states has to use taxpayers' money to go and pay for some of these excesses of the universities. It is therefore necessary that to an extent, governments must seek to cap the level by which the universities can be independent. But it also does not mean that it has to be an outright.
The former Vice Chancellor of the University of Ghana, Professor Ernest Aite, recently also had a view to express. And for him, the bill is most unnecessary and it will do more harm than good. Listen to him.
This bill, if indeed it gets passed into the act that governs how our universities are established and run, would be extremely unfortunate. It will destroy everything that universities are meant to represent. Universities are not simply there to train people and give them degrees. The main function for which governments everywhere in the world spend lots and lots of money to put up universities is to generate knowledge so that the knowledge will be used for social and economic development. That's the main reason. And for this, what you want is men and women who are curious about the things that happen around them, curious about what will make development go faster. Curious about how people will respond to things, whether treatment or whatever. So as soon as you take away that incentive to be curious, that incentive to search for knowledge, you effectively make the university quite useless.
Will the universities be rendered useless indeed? Let's begin by going to Parliament to find out where this bill is now. And joining us on the line is Samuel Obeng, who is the Executive Director of the Parliamentary Network Africa, PN Africa. Sami, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me, Samson.
Great. So, quickly, briefly tell us, where is the University Bill 2020 now in Parliament?
Well, Samson, so the bill was actually laid in the House on the 11th of March. Of course, once it is laid, the Right Honourable Speaker refers it to the appropriate committee. And so he referred it to the Committee on Education. The committee is expected to engage with various stakeholders at their level and make all necessary corrections, amendments, propose amendments and all of that, and resubmit to plenary for consideration. At the moment, it is at the level of the committee.
We have heard concerns raised about the bill surfacing in the House a number of times, even during the COVID. What are these concerns really about? And there are those who say, what is the urgency about it, that even during COVID, it appears to be tabled in the House?
Well, as to the urgency of the bill, Samson, I think that the executive branch, together with the leadership of Parliament, the majority side of Parliament, will be best to determine. But it is important to note that our study has shown that the legislative agenda of government for this particular year has a lot of education-related legislation, draft legislation bills that are expected to get to Parliament, or that are even already in Parliament. So at my last count, I could count as many as nine education-related legislation that are expected to be considered by Parliament, and this particular bill, is part of it. Of course, the parliamentary processes allows for some level of urgency, and also allows that some bills can be taken through processes within a very short period of time. This is not one of the bills that is actually going through the short haul. It is expected to go through the full haul and have citizens, interest groups, and all of that participation.
And the education-related bills you're talking about would include the one that brings or bests the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission, which will replace the Accreditation Board, among others, right?
Yes, so Samson, for example, we have Education Regulatory Bodies Bill. We have the Chartered Institute of Marketing Bill, Chartered Institute of Human Resources Bill, the Ghana Book Development Agency Bill, Library Services Bill, Pre-Tertiary Education Bill, Ghana National Research Fund Bill, the Ghana Communications Technology University Bill, and Complementary Education Agency Bill. And it's expected that, of course, others would actually be coming in before the House, this particular 7th Parliament tenure is
My
lost.
very final question to you will be, what are the expectations between now and when is this education bill, this university bill likely to be matured or to be passed? Of course, it does appear it will have to go hand in hand with the education regulatory bill.
Right, Samson. So we are PN Africa Ghana's Parliament under lawmaking process in Ghana's Parliament under 8 stages, or we break it down into 8 stages. So stage 1 being when the bill gets laid, in Parliament, that stage has been crossed. Stage 2, the first reading of the bill, which is usually the same day that the bill gets laid, that stage has been crossed. The third stage is when it is referred to the Committee of Parliament, has been crossed. Stage 4 is where committees are sitting on it. So I can say that it's at stage 4. After stage 4, the committee is expected to have its reports ready. The committee is expected to present its reports to plenary for what we call the second reading of the bill, where the details of the bill are not discussed, but more of the reasoning behind the bill gets discussed. Then the entire plenary will do consideration, clause by clause consideration of the bill. And of course, the bill will go through the final stage, which will be the third reading, and at that stage gets passed. You see, Samson, one of the things that is interesting, and perhaps you, with your experience as a lawyer who understands the Constitution better than I do, is that Article 106.14 of Ghana's Constitution actually stipulates that a bill introduced in Parliament by or on behalf of the President shall not be delayed for more than 3 months in any committee of Parliament. Unfortunately, I don't really see that this particular provision in the Constitution ever gets complied with. And so it will be difficult to actually say when this bill would actually take its full course. Of course, our experience over the years have shown that for draft legislation that has controversies, that has many interest groups and all of that talking about it, it usually takes long. Those ones that usually doesn't have much interest, it goes through the stages without
Do I get the impression from you that even though this is on the agenda for this session, it could suffer the fate that we have seen with bills like the right to information or the affirmative action, or the bill about parliamentary disclosure of asset declaration and all of those things, which appear to take years, and then a parliament's life is curtailed and another parliament takes over? Is that your suspicion that because of the interest in this bill, it might suffer a similar fate?
I suspect so, Samson. I suspect so, and it is for 2 reasons. First of all, the committee that is responsible for this bill, the Committee on Education, has so many referrals that it has to deal with at the moment simultaneously with this particular bill. And usually we know that committees are stretched, especially around this time when COVID, provides for so much uncertainty. This is the final year of the life of this current parliament. MPs would actually be going on to the campaign trail. COVID has actually shortened the campaign period. So that is one of the reasons. Okay. The other bit also is that the 7th parliament is expected to expire, after the elections of this year. And usually when a parliament expires, it expires with the processes that it has actually initiated. And so a new parliament will have to restart the process all over again.
I see. That's interesting. I said my very last, but in 30 seconds, do you really suspect that this will delay as much because of the fact that it gets tabled even within COVID? When Parliament was going back to deal with COVID-specific interventions, it found itself on the bill. We got an explanation that it was a mistake, but there are those who are suspicious that it wasn't a mistake. It was intended to be smuggled through the process quickly because we are in COVID.
Well, some say if there is one thing that at least I can doff my cap for the Parliament of Ghana on, it is the fact that when it comes to legislation, the legislative function of our institution of Parliament, they take it quite seriously. Of course, oversight has its own issues. People have their own concerns about the representational function. But when it comes to legislation, they take it quite seriously. I mean, at the committee level, you can trust that committee members will be very, very scrutinous of this, irrespective of the caucus they belong. And particularly because the minority caucus has also raised issues, they would not leave it going without much of a fight. And of course, we know the interest groups, the academicians and all, would also not allow this to go. And once media also has its zoom on it, Parliament takes seriously anything that the media has its lenses on. Okay.
Thank you very much, Samuel Obeng, Executive Director of the Parliamentary Network Africa. Thanks for that explanation and education, and particularly getting to know where the bill is and your expectation as to when this might become law at the 4th stage. Now, let me come to my guest in the studio, and Professor Kosia Dumakwa will start. I have read, you know, analysis, reviews that have been done by various interest groups. I read the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences. They have done one. I have read one done by UTAC, and thankfully UTAC's president is on the line. I've also read the one by the CDD. And they seem to have all been in the same meeting and, you know, brainstorm on the same ideas, because the points of opposition appear to be unanimous. They agree. The bill stifles independence, autonomy. It impedes academic freedom. It is deterrent to innovation, and it will slow decision making. You know, and the usefulness or competitiveness of the universities globally. They have a bigger issue with the 14-member council. It initially was supposed to be 14-member council, out of which government will appoint as many as 9 of them, 5 by the president and 3 through the minister. And they think all of this will be a way, sort of a proxy, to check and to control what happens, among various other things. What do you say is wrong with this bill?
Samson, thank you again. And as we like to say in Ghana, good morning to your cherished listeners. I don't want to deviate from the script. You know, we are here for very serious business. You pointed out that different groups all seem to be in the same meeting, and right. Of course we were not. I think it's very interesting that we are all reading the bill in the same way. There are 3 things that we are saying. The bill, and most importantly, the bill is unconstitutional, because the Constitution, and I will let Kojo, who's a lawyer, speak more about that, does not give the president the right to make these kinds of appointments at the most senior governance level of the university. And there was a good reason for that, to allow the universities to engage in the kind of business that they engage in without being politicized. Okay, that's the first thing we want to say. And I think we will need to go into details with all of this.
Of course, we have,
we have a lot of time
for this.
The second thing is that the bill is unnecessary. The government has given 2 reasons, purportedly, why it needs this bill. One being that universities have veered from their core business, which is actually not factual. And we can also go into what is happening with all modern universities of good repute. And we want to
interrogate that question about you veering from your core discipline, because there are examples around the place. People are asking, why is a science and technology university all of a sudden, you know, doing so many business courses and law and all of that?
We'll get into that. And right. I think we also owe it to parents and students to let them understand how higher education is operating globally today.
Right.
And let me just slip this in and say that Ghanaian universities, Ghanaian public universities, especially our older universities, have been the envy of many of our colleagues on the continent. Last year I was at a meeting in Nairobi, and Kenyans were lamenting that with a similar bill, which is now law, their hands are tied in so many ways, and they were like, oh, we really envy you guys in Ghana. Anyway, so we are saying that the bill seeks to fix something that is not broken.
Okay.
And indeed, the third thing that we are saying is that the bill will introduce a whole new set of problems that we are currently not grappling with. And Samson, if I may say, I have been teaching at the University of Ghana since 1989. In my time, this is my 31st year, I have worked under 7 different vice chancellors, starting with Prof. Akila Pasoya and now Professor Owusu. I have worked on council. I have been appointed to council twice. I worked, when I joined council, Mr. Ishmael Yamson was the chairman of council. I spent most of my time on council with Mr. Tony Otinjesi as chairman of council. And as I was leaving, Professor Dateba was chairman of council. This is the highest governing body of the university. And it worked. It worked. How many scandals have people heard coming out of the university? If we compare the University of Ghana to other public institutions in the country, and we can take the other universities as well, how many scandals have we heard? Maybe one in 5 years, another one here. We have weathered many storms very efficiently with our governance structure. The other complaint that the government makes is that about misspending.
Yes.
We have a governance structure that some of us even find onerous. Committee after committee after committee. The internal auditor will write to you about what we think are minute things that keep us from moving our work forward faster. And the Auditor General asks us for our statements of account. So there are already existing pieces of legislation to deal. The criminal code is there. The Minister of Finance can demand from the universities explanations. So this is unnecessary. And indeed, I cannot speak for all the universities, but I think for most of our older public universities, this accusation of financial malfeasance is unfounded. I do not think that the universities are worse than other public institutions. Indeed, I think that our reputation for good accounting is much better than many of the public institutions. And the layers of accountability from within all the way to the Auditor General are very, very strict.
Okay, so I'll have Professor Chat talk to us about the questioning of unconstitutionality that she raised, and this is your comfort zone. So what is unconstitutional about the structure that is being introduced for the appointment of the persons that are supposed to get onto the university's governance structure?
Well, we think that the bill as it stands offends various portions of the Constitution. You can talk about at least 4 provisions. The first is the fact that there's reference specifically to academic freedom in the Constitution under Article 21(1)(b, tied in with that freedom of expression. And so the fact that there's that recognition means that we need to talk about academic freedom itself, and I'll come back to that. The second provision is the fact that coming from the 79th Constitution and repeated in the 1992 Constitution, the President cannot hold the office of Chancellorship. And the bill as it stands now gives the President a backdoor approach to perform that very function under Article 68(1)(b). Then the Constitution of Council and the chairmanship of council is also provided for in the Constitution under Article 1953. And if you look at the bill as it is couched, it rather refers to Article 70 as the basis to constitute councils for the universities and vesting that power in the President to do so. However, Article 70 plays a different role. Article 70 is talking about the setting up of a national commission on higher education. This commission, in today's terms, is the National Commission on Tertiary Education. And so one cannot replace that institution which already exists or equate it with that of a governing council and use that as a basis for the President to interfere in the constitution and the composition of the council. Now, so if I may go into details of these 4 elements. The first one, academic freedom. There is, first of all, there's some misconceptions about
Before you go to academic freedom,
yes,
and if you check this bill, which you all seem to agree that it has an extensive, comprehensive definition for academic freedom, except that groups like the CDD say the definition does not mean anything once there is not a proper correlation to allow that freedom to be expressed. As if the bill is giving that freedom with the right and taking it with the left completely. But before we get to the academic freedom, you refer to Article 68 and then 1953. You say by Article 68(1) of the Constitution, the President cannot be a Chancellor, but he's finding a way to indirectly do that job. And then you say by 1953, the appointment onto the council is not supposed to be done by him. But in this case, he's going to be appointing as many as six of the members?
Eight.
No, 6 by the President and 3 by the Minister. So the government will have 9. Right. Take us through these two, 68 and 195, and explain clearly where in the bill the President is seeking to do, or the government is seeking to do, what you say is unconstitutional.
So as I said, Article 68(1)(b) says that the President cannot be a Chancellor of a university.
Okay.
Now, if you go to the new provision, it is saying that the President will appoint the Chancellor, and the 3 persons will be nominated by the Council, and the President will ultimately make the final decision. We think that this is a way where the President will end up by proxy performing that function. So that is where we have the problem with.
But 68(1)(b)
yes,
of the Constitution of Ghana says, the President shall not, while he continues in office as President, B, hold the office of Chancellor or head of any university in Ghana.
Yes.
And you say there's a provision in the bill where he's seeking to do so.
Yes,
Can
in
you
an
show
indirect
us?
manner.
Yeah, can you show us that?
So while I try to pull that out, let me.
That's 14, clause 14(1) of the new bill. Clause 14(1).
14(1).
Yep.
Okay. So 14(1) reads.
Yeah.
A public university shall have a chancellor who shall be appointed by the President. So that is where we have the issue with. The chancellor is supposed to play some critical roles in the governance of the university. He or she is one of the 3 persons considered as principal officers of the university. And so if you have a situation where the President has the power to appoint the chancellor, then by proxy, the President is performing that role. And I think that is where it offends against.
The Constitution says he cannot be a Chancellor whilst he's President. In clause 14 of the bill, he is not the one who will be Chancellor.
No.
It is he who will appoint the Chancellor. Does the Constitution say he cannot do that?
The Constitution directly does not say by 68(1) he cannot do that. But if you go to 1953, it is clear that the University Council has the power to do that. And the University of Ghana has been doing that for some time. And so that is where we have issue with that constitutionally. We should go by 1953. Yes.
And if we are going by 1953,
we should read 1953.
Yes, I would like us to go to 1953 as well, because we need to have everything clearly made out. Article 1953 says that the power to appoint persons to hold or act in an office in a body of higher education, research, or professional training shall vest in the council or other governing body of that institution or body.
Yes.
So,
and Samson, even before that, it says that the president is allowed to appoint officers to public services, except for public universities and other educational institutions.
Yes.
It is clear and unambiguous.
Okay. So clearly on these, issues, this is unconstitutional.
Yes.
Right. There's another constitutional aspect of it. I want you to address it, and then I'll get to my other guest on Zoom, so that we deal with other issues. Then you will come later to deal with the question of academic freedom. You also suggest that the power given by the president in the bill to, as it were, dissolve the university council if there is an emergency is also unlawful. How do you justify that?
Well, in the first place, by tradition, this has never been the case. Unless if you go back to the 1960s when, during Nkrumah's period, when he had a way of even handpicking members to the council. So it gives the president the power to be able to influence the council. Secondly, that provision does not define what is an emergency. So it means that in the president's mind, if there is an emergency, that situation can arise. And we have an historical antecedent in what happened at the University of Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. 2018 October, yes, when the president dissolved the University Governing Council, even dismissed the Vice Chancellor, set up an interim council without the normal representatives, and then decided to ask this body to run the university. So we think that that is clearly not part of the law, and it cannot come into place. Secondly,
but those things you refer to, they obviously were mistakes making, they were admitted somewhat, and then they were sort of reversed, some of those things. The Asante Hene, who is a chancellor, subsequently had to assert his authority, and the government seemed to have backed down. Things that ought to have been done through the tertiary, what's that institution again? The
QNSC.
No, there's the tertiary something institution that was supposed to superintend, supposed to do something which it didn't do by way of the appointment and things. The government then later, ceded the opportunity to that institution to do that.
Yes.
Right.
So that is, we are dealing with the bill as it is now, and we are saying that the fact that it's not defined what constitutes an emergency is problematic. And then the fact that this council, interim management council, can rule for a stated period, that is also not stated.
Okay.
So we can't tell how long this can also go on. In connection with that, it is saying that there's a transitional period for the new bill to come into place. And during this transitional period, government will also set up interim management councils to run the universities.
Okay.
And within that time frame, we don't know the composition of this council, and it can make laws which will then be operational to run the universities until they set up new governing councils. So that adds to the problem that we are discussing in this context.
Okay, and when I get back to you, I'm going to Professor Drew. When I get back to you on the question of the president's power to collapse the council almost at will, because the law says in the case of emergency, and when you read the CDD's review, they say that you don't define the emergency, so it means anything could be an emergency for you, you will use to collapse the council. And the president also has power to fire a member of the council almost at will, and we will look at that as well. But Professor Drew, the cliche, which is true, is that he who pays the piper calls the tune. These are public universities funded by the state. If the executive wants to have a direct control by way of the appointments and the membership of the council and the way the university conducts itself, What's wrong with that?
Thank you very much, Samson, and good morning to listeners. Samson, universities are the only public-funded institutions that invest taxpayers' money in developing critical minds. Critical mind development requires independence. It requires non-interference of processes. And that is the more reason, if you look at the history of university development in our country, the issue of governance has been tied to academic freedom and autonomy. And indeed, let me tell you that the governance of a university requires that university leadership defends academic freedom, encourage shared governance, promote accountability, ensure meritocracy, and I underline that meritocracy in selection and strive for excellence. Indeed, autonomy and academic freedom of universities are regarded as necessary ingredients for quality delivery of university education. Now, so government funds universities, but government funds universities for a particular purpose. And that purpose is to develop critical thinkers, to develop critical-minded people who will balance the interest-oriented decisions that we encounter in our country. Historically, we know that universities had operated under this academic freedom until the 1960s, when the then president, Kwame Nkrumah, wanted to dismiss one lecturer for purposes of accusation of having indulged in subversive activities. And the then vice chancellor stood against that and argued strongly that that will be an affront to academic freedom. This Samson led to the then government, CPP government, quickly to initiate means of overhauling the University of Ghana Bill and abolished Article 15 of the Act, which granted power to the University Council to enact statutes.
Enactment of statutes.
For the general administration of the and was installed as the chancellor, and so appointed everybody and had the power to dismiss anyone at any time. Until 1998, when J.J. Rawlings decided not to hold the position of what a chancellor and allow the governing councils to operate in terms of managing the universities, we've had chancellors being presidents, and they could manipulate the universities at any time. And this is why I personally think, and I think I go alongside all those who think that the universities must be allowed to operate as independent institutions that can have the freedom to develop the critical thinkers that we need to support our national policy development. And they must be allowed the autonomy they require to help them generate knowledge that will not be sectional in orientation, but that will help governments to initiate policies that will serve the interest of government irrespective. To make the university more autonomous and necessary, which is a necessary academic condition, I strongly believe that this bill needs to actually, it shouldn't even be considered at all. There are elements that are good that can be operationalized within the university's own statutes. But as it stands, and I have gone through it, and I have always defined it as ridiculously complicated in terms of context, contextually unworkable, and operationally suppressive. Why do I say that? If the argument is that the universities are veering from their primary responsibilities. Samson, if they are veering from their primary responsibilities, the big question is that why are they veering from their primary responsibilities? Is it even true? Is it even the case that they are veering from their primary responsibilities? I say no. They are rather adding on to their primary responsibilities. And there are reasons for that. One, demands have increased. And one university cannot be serving the 20 million people that we have in the country. So they need to divest to meet demands is one. Two, government subvention to universities are greatly dwindling, and yet universities must operate. So there's a need to divest of mandate so that you can get something doing. These are contributory factors. Now, Samson, if you go to the question of universities, complaints, and all those things coming up, my question is, why do we have the regulatory bodies? The university is well structured. The governing councils operate. There are committees that look at all these things. So if, for heaven's sake, complaints have gotten to the ministry requiring intervention, why wouldn't the governing councils or the National Council of Tertiary Education be mandated to work on this thing? Does this require harmonization of universities' bills? I think no. Now, Samson, let's look at the government nominees. You've already talked about that.
Right.
Directly, the president appoints 5, including the chairman, it's 6. Indirectly, the Ghana Education Service appoints 1, and then the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission appoints 1, making it 8. 8 out of 13, which implies that the government has 8, and out of this, the bill proposes that 7 can form a quorum. So at any point, any 7 can meet and take a decision. And let's not forget that in Ghana, when we talk about government representation, we are not talking about experts. We are talking about political party representation. So in effect, what the bill seeks to promote is to dominate councils with partisan interests, which for me will undermine the basic principles of setting up universities.
Okay. All right, Prof, hold on there for me, and let me get to...
Can I just say quickly something
yes,
about
and Charles Marfo
the
gets ready. Yes, Charles Marfo gets ready on the same issue, and I'll read just a small portion of what CDD says about that aspect, and then get your view on it, Charles Marfo. So yes, go ahead quickly.
So I think it's important to underscore the fact that universities are not seeking to not be financially accountable. We are seeking political independence. I also want to say that to suggest that the universities have had more financial scandals than other public institutions is actually, with all due respect, it's ridiculous.
Okay.
We can count the number of financial scandals in our universities' histories of 60 and so many years, probably on 1 or 2 hands. Take our own ministries, who should then oversee us. Year after year, we listen to the Auditor General, and we see the financial scandals that are there. I think you would, our systems are very well regulated, and as Professor Odro has said, if the regulator, the NCTE, sees something going on and doesn't do it, I don't think that adding another piece of legislation is going to fix that. And I just wanted to put that in quickly.
And that's one of the points where in my reading of the various reviews, I seem to find that almost all the groups seem to agree on same issues. If you read the review by the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences, if you read the CDD as well, they all say, for example, that if you say there are financial improprieties, there is a way to deal with them. There are laws already that exist to deal with them. You don't need to change the university's bill and governance to be able to deal with them. There are acts of fraud, there are acts of crime that must be attended to by the specific laws. Now, Professor Charles Marfo, here is what the CDD says about the questioning of he who pays the piper calls the tune. They say that in paragraph 1 of the memorandum, proponents of the bill appear to suggest that government invests financially in public universities. Therefore, it must have a say in the management of same. Though there is a justification for this position, government already has a say in the governing structure of universities. Perhaps what government wants is more say. However, it is for good reason that the Constitution of Ghana has provided these arrangements. Similar to the situation where government funds the Electoral Commission, the Judiciary, the National Commission on Civic Education, the Commission for Human Rights and Administrative Justice, the Audit Service of Ghana, but does not dictate how these institutions are run. Universities fall in the same categories. All over the world, governments fund public universities, but they do not dictate how these institutions, universities, operate. There are many emerging challenges to university education which require a conscious effort to decentralize, empower, and give more autonomy to universities to ensure that they are able to adapt to the ever-changing environment of learning. In your paper, 25 pages, you provide alternatives to every suggestion in the bill. And yet, you also come to the conclusion that the bill is needless, it ought not, be considered at all. Why so? Professor Charles Marfo.
Yeah, why so? Something are you okay?
Yes.
Yes, good. So I thought you wanted me to follow up a little bit on the question you put to Professor Group first before coming to this. And so I was going to say that it is even in the interest of government that universities remain to the extent that it is only at that place that what I call wise counseling normally comes from. I mean, you can observe our political jurisdiction now, where the nation is almost to halves, right? And so as an issue, people take positions. When it comes to level-headed suggestions, it has always come to be rightly pointed out. It is that place where, should I say, wisdom is made. That's where knowledge is produced, right? And people do that with freedom, knowing that after they have placed their positions, nothing untoward will happen to them, right? And so we think we need to keep
we have a challenge there with Professor Charles Marfo's line, but let me hear briefly from the GRASAC president on this, and then we hope that Prof can correct his own, and then we can move on. So, Mr. Tego, what do you say about this particular point?
Positions across the country. When the bill was really put before us, and government position was the fact that the universities are not being accountable in terms of financial propriety, and they are veering off their purpose. The question we asked was that there are quasi-public institutions like the Auditor General that audits the financial records of the university, and they have been doing so well in reporting the financial statements of the universities over the years. So why the need for government to now be a participant in how the university spends its money? Does that mean it will subvert the powers of the Auditor General now because you are becoming a participant in how the university runs its administration? And the other issue of the veering off the question is, there is NCT, there is NAB that actually approves and accredits universities program. So it cannot be that by allowing government to actually control how universities are run, there won't be universities steering off their purpose. So the position of GRASAG is that this bill is really needless. That's the first thing. And it solves only a problem that exists in someone's imagination. That is really what we are saying. Whose interest is government seeking to protect with this bill? Is it the interest of the students, the lecturers, the administrators, or the government itself? What we see here, really, as student leaders, is that government is trying to protect itself by introducing the bill that gives it unimpeded control over the university. And we are worried about that because in the case of, I'm a student from K University, so I'll use K University as an example. On the 22nd of October issue, the remote cause of this fracas on campus was that the halls of residence were converted from a male hall to mixed hall, and students were unhappy and all that. We had the Minister of Education then, who is still a minister, actually sided with government, with the institution, that it was a good idea. Now, when the issue happened, the government decided to excuse itself and say it is the University Council's fault, so they were dissolving the University Council. Now, our problem is that in the future, where now government and the university are together on a matter of this sort, the students will be the ones to be affected because we don't have anyone to run to. When it happened on the 22nd October, students now had the feeling that, okay, we can run to government because even though it is the minister who somehow accepted the proposal from council, we still thought that the president could have a supervisory role over the activity of the university and the decision of council. And indeed, when we went, government decided to dissolve the council, which we then felt, as the students felt, it was needless. So we decided that we will side with Professor Breeder and Soten. Now, with this new bill, what we are seeing is that government will not only be a supervisor in the activities of the university, government will now be an active decision maker. So in case of any fracas or issue that affects students, we will not have anyone to run to, and it will create more problems for the university. So our concern really is that this bill threatens the stability of our university. It threatens the stability of our university because we think Section 5 is problematic, and the fact that the government, the president, can dissolve the council at any time in terms of emergency creates a problem. This provision in the bill that the president may dissolve and reconstitute the council in the case of emergency and appoint an interim council to operate for the fixed period cannot be accepted really in this bill. Why are we saying this? What kind of emergency are we talking about here? What kind of emergency? Is it when there is a disturbance in the hall or when there is a faculty demonstration? What kind of emergency are we talking about?
Or when some of the reviewers have asked a question, or when by something government is trying to do, students are not happy about it, and then, as it were, they start their demonstrations, that will be an emergency, and the government will, as it were, collapse the university council when it is not their fault.
And exactly the point I'm coming to. Ordinarily, these emergencies may be a decision by government, a decision by a hall of residents, or a decision by even a faculty. It may not really be a decision by council. And the fact that there is a disturbance on campus does not call for the dissolution of the university council.
Okay.
You understand?
Yeah.
And what is even worrying, that the bill says the council should be dissolved. And believe you, a council when not even investigated to ascertain the causes of those emergencies.
Okay.
Why not even suspend the council for, let's say, a month or two? Appoint an interim council to investigate the causes of those disturbances and understand whether the council is really at fault or they were generated. Why would you even dissolve it in the first place? So it tells that the government is only interested in having control over the universities.
All right.
And our worry is that it's possible that this government has good intentions. They want to ensure accountability. But there may be future governments that may not really be charitable with the universities. And any lecturer or vice chancellor who rises in terms of speaking their independent mind against government policy may really face the act of government.
Interesting. Interesting that somewhat you have trust in the one introducing the policy, but you have a fear that someone might misuse it in future. But I need to take a break. I need to take a break. But before I do that, Larry K. Agbado, the editor, Colleges of Education Weekly Journal, will give us, a brief of his views, particularly on the questioning that when we come back, we shall pay a lot of attention to. The questionings of the universities veering from their core principle, and then academic freedom. Where do you stand on this charge, which is one of the major reasons for the introduction of the new bill, that the universities have veered away from their core disciplines? Okay, he's talking, but we can't hear him. I suppose his mic is muted.
Yeah. All right. Okay, it's okay now.
Good. I can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay. So, as I was saying earlier, good morning and good morning to my colleagues, senior panel members. It's a privilege to be on the same platform with them. So kindly permit me to share my views on a question you asked at the beginning about how the online learning is ongoing, because with the colleges of education, there's something very key that we need to draw attention to over there. Colleges of education train teachers. It's a pre-service teacher training institution. And in this era that this COVID has made everything look the way it is, personally, I'm not okay with this online learning for trainee teachers. These are people we are training to go out there and also teach the younger ones. You are teaching them methods of teaching, and I don't know how that is going to be possible through the online system. So in the first place, I would like government to take a very good look at that. Other institutions can roll out the online learning, but for colleges of education, I think we should take a critical look at that. Now, coming to the university bill, it will interest us to know that colleges of education, we have about 46 colleges of education across the country. And it will interest us to know that the entire bill does not even cover colleges of education proper. The only part of the bill that I would say covers colleges of education is when you go to Section 3, Clause 3, where it speaks about the Minister of Education, in consultation with the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission and other relevant institutions, and in accordance with the Act, declare any college or public tertiary institution as a constituent college of a public university. Where a college or a public tertiary institution is established or declared as a constituent college of a public university under subsection 3, the governing council of that college or public tertiary institution shall be responsible for the constituent college of that public university. Now, when we look at this section of the bill, you realize that as we speak now, colleges of education, per an act that was passed in 2012, were upgraded into tertiary institutions. Aside that, these same colleges are currently under 5 public universities: University of Ghana, Legon, University of Cape Coast, Winneba, KNUST, and UDS. So we have these 46 colleges of education across the country that have been shared among these 5 public universities. And these public universities are mentoring them. In the next 2-3 years, this mentoring session will be over. And after the 2-3 years, the colleges will now be on their own to choose which institution they would like to go under. And in preparing a bill like this, which is very, very important in determining the progress of education in Ghana, it is just fair enough that we make room for colleges of education. I'm not speaking for the various groups or unions that we find in the colleges of education, but per my interactions with the leadership of the various groups that we have in the colleges of education, I got shocked that they have not even been consulted on this bill. Be it CTAC, SENSAC, the junior union, which is TAC, or even PRINCOF. They didn't make this formal to me, but per my personal interactions with them, I realized that most of them have not, if not most, all of them have not even been consulted in drafting this bill. Per my checks at Parliament, I realized that there's likely to be a stakeholder consultation next week, after which there will be a second consideration of the bill. And these are people that, at least, if not for nothing, needs to also make an input into this bill. When are they going to be consulted? Will the bill be passed before we come back, that we take their inputs?
Okay, those are very interesting questions there. And on that, okay, on that note, we take a quick break, and when we return, like I told you, we will interrogate the question that one of the main reasons the bill is being introduced is that the universities have, quote, veered away from their core discipline. How true is that? Don't you see signs of that? But is this the solution? And then academic freedom, very important central part of any university's growth. Is it true that it will be completely taken away if this bill passes? We'll be right back.